Okay, so we're comparing notes. All right, so far as we know, uh, people who consume human flesh they have concentrated, I want to say, pockets of pathogens attacking and rebuilding their blood cells constantly, rendering them almost immune to any other types of major infections. And from what we know, cannibals, they also have a protective membrane around their brain that has actually stopped any further infection reaching it. So while they display symptoms of psychosis, the laughing, shakes,
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like that, the
The
membrane has
twitch.
actually stopped from the actual infection that has actually, infected the rest of the population of this planet, I guess. Uh, they're almost immune to it because of that membrane. Their body has adapted to it.
That's that's interesting because in my research I found that any consumption of the undead's flesh or something that contains the virus results in almost immediate death. What
Yeah.
I know about the
Well,
virus is it's fluid based. It enters via the bloodstream. It uses the cells in the frontal lobe of the brain so it can replicate itself, and it destroys the said cells. It kills the host pretty much by stopping the heart and causing organ shutdowns. But the virus keeps the brain alive but dormant, and eventually it mutates into a new organ that doesn't any longer require energy, water, oxygen, whatever. And the new brain can use, but it's not dependent on the host's body. And then it can withstand pretty much extreme heat, cold, pressure, pain, all that stuff, the rest.
yeah. That's good to know because I mean the mode of transmission is obviously fluid based. It's we've also discovered that it can spread through droplets. So like you said, so for
Oh
instance,
yeah,
if
open
an infected
unprotected
person,
eyes.
yeah, anything. I mean, we put out a broadcast before saying that membranes, any and all membranes can spread it. So this even means that this infection can't be spread sexually. So,
Absolutely, fluid transmission. So, as far as symptoms and whatnot, in your research, what is the reanimation time? I found to be about 23 hours, depending on the health of the subject or the infected host. Um, yeah, it takes as little as 8 hours to start developing dementia and whatnot, and then loss of muscle coordination and all that, up to 23 hours.
I have seen it quicker depending on the type of or where the wound is. And
And severity, yeah, of course.
yeah, so if, for instance, if a patient is bitten on the foot, it will take longer for it to travel to the brain. Or,
Right.
say an extremity got, bitten off like a toe or a finger. They will not become infected. Though you would think that they would because of the saliva, but 9 times out of 10 it wouldn't. Because, obviously they're not alive. They're not producing saliva.
Right.
So that's the problem. What really helps the transmission of the virus is the people that exchange fluids after they've been infected. So if I get bitten and I coughed on you, we are both going to become one of the things outside.
Right. Right. And then, well, most people, before the 8 hours where they start feeling super severe symptoms, they just feel like the common cold, possibly. So they go on about their daily routine, never knowing that they're infected. So,
And what makes matters worse is that if they're outside working, that it actually promotes faster the infection reaching to the brain. It will get there quicker. Blood is pumping more. It helps the spread of it. But that's the interesting thing about cannibals, though, is that even though they may get bitten or scratched or anything like that, they do not seem to get infected. And that's because of the protective membrane. Now, obviously, our brains already have these, naturally, but theirs have become thicker. So any other hints of the infection are they know their bodies know to actually keep them outside of the membrane. so the brain protects
That's
itself.
interesting. I haven't observed that myself, but that's very, very interesting.
We have looked at
What's your take on cross-species infection? Because I know that has been a worry for some people also. What if the wolves become infected, or what if any other animals become infected
that
that could
is
possibly
actually
bite or
funny.
scratch someone?
We noticed some of the undead attacking some cows earlier, and it was noted that one of the cows had displayed the same type of symptoms, of mad cow disease, which, in terms of Kuru, they're pretty similar.
Yeah,
But
it's very
it
reminiscent of
was
that.
it was very interesting because this cow started foaming at the mouth as if it had rabies at the same time. It then went into cardiac arrest and then died. So I am not seeing, cross species contamination. I'm not too worried about it, but I do still feel like if though the animal has died, the meat is still tainted. So
Yeah, so I think so reanimation or permanent death. I mean,
permanent death, indefinitely.
okay.
From what I've
Yeah,
seen.
it's
I mean,
Yeah, same here. My research shows it's highly toxic. But what's interesting to me is that mosquitoes instinctively refuse to bite infected blood cells. So mosquitoes and other blood-sucking parasites or insects will not bite an infected victim or host, which is very interesting.
that's good to know. That is. I would love to see what, if a mosquito had actually bitten one of them. I mean, you know, um,
It
I
has to
imagine
have
that
some sort of cellular structure in its body that denies it instinctively to infect.
undead, mosquitoes like sweet blood, right? They,
Right.
so how they have they have their little needle or whatever you want to call it, but and they taste it before they
Proboscis.
actually start sucking. Yes, they taste it before they start sucking. So I'm thinking that once they have tasted it, not biting and actually receiving the blood, it's because the blood is no longer sweet. I think the host's body of the infection has actually broken down the sugars temporarily to actually
So it
start
starts to
using it as
coagulate.
energy.
Could
I'm
I
thinking
put in
that.
my 2 cents real quick?
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
I actually happen to know quite a lot about insects, and mosquitoes are attracted to the carbon dioxide that comes from our breath, and happen to
Zombies do
notice that.
not breathe.
Yeah, so they may just not notice that they're there. They also happen to be cold, so I
That
don't see
is
why they would
interesting.
be attracted.
That makes sense.
You might be absolutely right. Thank you, thank you. That's actually really interesting. It makes sense. Well, and plus the fact if they were to bite an infected host, their blood is already coagulated, so they're not going to get anything out of it. They would have to bite a recently infected host.
Yeah. That's a
So
wonder how
there
those
would
So,
things
be a
walk around,
potential
to be honest with you.
transmission there.
what was that?
There could be potential transmission there if it were someone that just got the sickness but was able to breathe and get it from a mosquito.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Within that 8 to 13 hour period before their blood starts to coagulate and, like he said, break down the sugars to, feed the new organ.
Hmm.
Um,
You
I
know
was
what? That actually leads
wondering.
me to believe something. I thought about this. Say if a mosquito had bitten a recently infected individual, right? So at the same time, do you think that the infection actually, say, adapts, changes while after the individual has been infected? Because I've
There's
seen that it
always a
changes.
possibility it can mutate.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
see, as it reacts to our biochemistry. So if a mosquito had actually bitten a recently infected individual, right, and then had bitten an animal, I would imagine that the animal would not die simply because the infection that was pulled from was not in its final form.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it would have to be transferred from the fully developed host into the where the brain had mutated itself into the new organ or whatnot, the dominant organ of the body. I would think that it would have to somehow be transferred after that stage. You might be right. So what my research and I'm not saying this is true or not. I'm taking a shot in the dark here, but I'm willing to try. I've heard down the line that there might be some notes of interest, possibly something to help our cause, I guess, on Scalisti Island, as well as maybe a couple other things of value. Maybe somebody would find worth something, but my my primary focus is on what might or might not be there as far as notes and valuable research documents. Um, I know you guys are kind of interested in maybe fighting and trying to find a cure somehow, maybe something. Um, just wondering if maybe you guys or somebody would be interested in going with me and checking it out.
Hmm. When is this proposed expedition?
Um, I'm ready to leave ASAP, but I'm willing to adjust my schedule to somebody that better suits them.